Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Now in today's video we're going to take a look at one of the hardest Necropolis bosses, at least in my opinion, and that is of course Black Widow Clairvoyant, the second fight on the Odin path. This fight has given me a lot of trouble both in my initial pass and then also on the Dimensional Beings run that I just did for Karina's, due to just the way these nodes work. Essentially you are immune to various things and you get placebos on you, so it's just going to be feeding her own kit with immunities and also nullifying the buffs and everything. And in addition to the reverse controls that is part of the trap node here, she's just going to be gaining a lot of power due to her own abilities. And then anytime she gets to 20 or 0 of her own clairvoyant charges, she's going to go unblockable and get a very long death touch, which basically means any hit off of a special attack or a basic attack, which is, by the way, unblockable, any hit is just going to instantly KO you. So this is one of these fights where you're trying to keep track of everything and it's very unruly. In order to get a really good try, you just have to be totally locked in and fully concentrating. But what I found is that in Enchantress's kit, she not only has the damage for a long form fight like this with 8 million health, but her defensive abilities also give her some incredible tools for dealing with all of the things that I just mentioned. The power gain, the reverse controls, and even evading of her the special one, which is a single hit special. Because of her levitate spell, it will prevent her from getting knocked down and automatically evade even in route the special one, even when it's unblockable. So I'll get into the fight in a minute, but since it's kind of a long one, you can watch it in the background and then I'll kind of tell you how I set it up and what I was thinking when I was doing the fight. But spoiler, we do end with a full yellow bar, which again, I don't know many champions that can pull that off and do it relatively easily. Now, I do want to talk about a couple things before we get going here. First of all, I am willing to make a very detailed how to play Enchantress kit because personally I happen to love this champion and she does have her flaws and she is certainly like not usable in every scenario, but there are times to use her in not just like huge endgame matchups. She has utility for moderate matchups as well. I think the only thing you'll never use her for is Battlegrounds attack. But, you know, medium health pools, she does have various ways to play that still has decent damage. And certainly for like pain content for 1.5 million and higher, or these big health pools, she does have a lot of tricks to the trade here to make sure that you have a good time with her. It's just a lot of people have decided that she's too complicated to learn. So if you are interested, please leave me a comment because I will go into it a little bit in this video, but I am willing to make like a very detailed guide with a variety of gameplay and like going over the abilities if you think that's something that you would like. So please let me know. And second of all, the reason I'm making this video now is that she didn't get any balance update. Basically, they're keeping her just as is. And, you know, the defense is a whole different discussion that we don't need to get into. I personally think she's fine as a defender. It gives them some design space to make some characters to counter her. And overall, once people have kind of learned how to fight her, there's only 1 or 2 Alliance War nodes where she can be pretty rough. And even in those cases, if she doesn't have the tactic, they are it's pretty easy to deal with them, basically. But offensively, I was actually a little shocked that she didn't get just a little bit of something. And, you know, I've talked to a lot of people about this. I've had some videos in the past saying that I was predicting she would get a slight offensive tune-up, and at the end of the day, she didn't. And it's fine because I do think that her max level and like everything she brings to the table, her totality of her kit is just astonishing. And it's also one of those things that's a little tricky to like tweak. It's not like changing a couple numbers here and there would really do much of anything to make her a lot better. The thing that I just didn't love about her is the like lose everything clause when you have over 9 spells. And also I felt that some of her utility early in the fight was pretty negligible, to the point where I was wishing that things like her atrophy and neutralize were a little bit stronger earlier in the fight and they could keep the same potency for later in the fight. It's just that like while you're building, you're basically doing absolutely nothing and just stalling, and that was something that I didn't really love about her kit. But either way, I've come to terms with the fact that she didn't get a buff, and you know, we'll see in this fight she's plenty powerful, right? We're already well into, in the background, you can see we're into the part of the fight where we're just spamming our special 2s. And now I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I set this up so that, you know, if you do want to not listen to the video and just sort of watch the gameplay later, you can see this setup for yourself and kind of figure out what I was thinking here. So basically with her, the basics of how you play her is you throw a certain number of special ones at the, quote, beginning of the fight. It can be whatever you really want it to be, but in general, the rules are that by the time you get to the fight where you are just spamming your special 2s, you want to have equilibrium between your 3 spells, right? So these are the purple, the green, and the orange. And, you know, the purple ones are kind of your mystic utility, the green ones are your defensive ones, and then the orange ones are your damage sources, right? So let's go from right to left and figure out what I did here. So the evocation spells, which are the damaging ones, right? She has access to a few things. Incinerate, Cold Snap, and Shock are basically what they are. And the Incinerate does the most guaranteed damage. The Cold Snap does about 2/3 the amount as the Incinerate does, but it has the added utility of Cold Snap, which is, you know, evade utility. So that's why it does a little bit less damage. And then the Shock is a little bit of a roll of the dice because the shocks themselves are less potency than the Incinerate total, like the total damage that you get from that mode of using damage, but there's always a 55% chance that they reapply, which means more often than not, if you apply one shock, it will reapply once, it may reapply twice, it may keep chaining and reapplying. So there is a bit of an RNG factor, and I found that even though mathematically it should add up to be more damage than the Incinerate, like more often than not, you should flip a coin and get, like, on average, like 3 shocks or so per shock. But I do find that often it underperforms the Incinerate. The thing is, though, she goes through Incinerate immunity with her Hellfire mode during this, so in this fight, using Incinerate would be a bad idea. And then we already talked about how Cold Snap, the damage is a little bit less. So that's why I went with Shock, and I just placed 5 of those on, right? There were 5 shocks. It just means every time we throw a special 2, it'll give me 5 of my Chain Lightning, and then those will just continue to refresh. Now, we'll talk about the effects of the equilibrium a little bit later. We're going to talk a little bit about the green spells. Now, I used all 3 of these because they're all helpful. The haste one gives you an unstoppable on dash, which doesn't really help in this fight, but what it does do is it gives you immunity to inverted controls. And I already talked about in this fight, that is one of the most annoying things to keep track of, because especially when you're dealing with like Death Touch and Unblockable, where one mistake messes you up, if you just turn off the inverted controls, that's quite nice. So that's the first one. Then the Levitate spell. This gives you basically the ability to regen on block, which is always nice, but also it gives you the ability to not be knocked down by the final hit of a knockdown combo, which is like a, you know, special attack or a heavy attack. And of course, Claire happens to have a single hit heavy and a single hit special 1, which means if she tries to throw that at you and you don't get out of the way manually, it will automatically evade. And you've probably already seen it a few times. She's thrown a special 1 in Roots, and I've just been like a little slow, and I get the ability to just evade it naturally. She cannot knock me down. Now, if she throws a special 2 in Root, I might be toast, but the whole point is I don't push her to her special 2. And then finally, Etherealness. It gives a chance to miss and a chance to regen some energy damage. We're not really taking hits, but that would regen any of her energy damage on basic hits and things like that. But also just a slight chance to miss. So it gives me one more safety net if she's coming at me unblockable. Now, when it comes to the purple spells, we do not want to really mess with anything because she doesn't have any buffs herself. So there's no reason for Nullify, Neutralize, or Atrophy. But because we have an Awakened Enchantress, we set up Charm over and over and over again. And what Charm does is it gives you a little bit more power on your power steals, which is off of your basic combos, and it also reduces the potency of her ability power rate, which is the thing that happens as she's immune to stuff and nullifying stuff for you. She gains her own burst of power. So we essentially set up all 5 of those spells, and then when you're in equilibrium of all 5 spells, you get multiple effects First of all, a much higher crit rate on the special 2 itself. You get a much higher attack rating when you have 12 spells all together. And then you also will reapply the effects of every single spell. So all of those defensive things, all 5 of the shocks, and then the unstackable charm that I put on there will always reapply with the special 2. And then finally, we lifesteal. I think when you're fully ramped up, it's like 1.8% of the damage dealt. Which, you know, when you're guaranteed critting almost and get a massive attack boost, it's actually a decent amount. So you can see here that we finished with a full yellow bar because of all of that utility. And what it took was just memorizing some spells, man. I know that it takes a little bit of time to get it all down, but I do have some tips and tricks for how to memorize them. If you want to learn more, please do leave a comment because I'm happy to make another video on her. I just wanted to give you a little bit of an insight on the buff, no buff situation and show this fight in the background. So hopefully this was enjoyable for you. This is just the first taste of Enchantress. If you guys want to see more, let me know. I'll make more videos. I personally love this champ. Hopefully I can bring a few other people to the dark side, that she is worthwhile for the rank up, not just for defense. There's a lot going on in her kit, and you saw right there how powerful she absolutely can be. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.